Susan Pinker says real-world social circles, not the Twitter or Facebook social circles, are essential to our well-being and health and as valuable as exercise and a good diet. Joining us now for more, here's Susan Pinker, author of The Village Effect, How Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Healthier and Happier. And we welcome you back to TVO. Because you and I met, I don't know how long ago, it's a long time ago that you were last on this program, but it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Your last book, you did The Sexual Paradox, and I wanted to start by asking what led you to writing this book coming out of that one.
At the end of that last book, I was left with a question, Steve, which is, why do women all over the world live longer than men? So everywhere in the developed world, they live about 5 to 7 years longer. And I wanted to know why that was. And I knew some of it had to do with their social bonds. So, for example, we know that women who get out and interact socially more often are more likely to keep their memories and have dementia less often. So that's really what started me on this journey. What is it about women's social interaction that promotes this health and resilience and longevity?
And you've called it the village effect. So what is the village effect?
Well, the village effect is a metaphor that I'm using to kind of express the kind of social contact that we need to survive and thrive. Because let's face it, not all social contact is created equal. But it actually, the book gets its name from a real village. And that's a story too, because when I was talking about my last book, I was sitting in a lecture hall in Toronto, in fact, when I heard an amazing fact. An evolutionary biologist gave a lecture and stood up and said, there is only one place in the world where men live as long as women, or nearly as long, and it's an island in Italy called Sardinia, a remote area, and in that place, that's where men live as long as women. So I sat up in my seat, and I thought, I'm going to go there and find out what is going on, not only the social factors, but the science that explains this. And so that's why I gave the book that name.
So you went to Italy, you talked to the men, you talked to the women. What'd you find out?
Well, I went to that remote part of an island off Italy where, incredibly, there are 10 times the number of centenarians as we have in Canada, and 6 times as many as there are in the Italian mainland, just 150 kilometers away. So there was something going on there. But one of the things I found out will be, I guess, resonant for you as a broadcaster, which is I arrived there, in fact, with my daughter who had just done a Zowski Fellowship, and we had a big, beautiful Marantz tape recorder, and we wanted to capture these centenarians on tape. And when we got there, every centenarian that we met was surrounded by this group of neighbors, friends, nieces, nephews, children, the priest, the shopkeeper, the barkeeper, and none of them could finish a sentence without being interrupted. So actually, the sound was not great, but that was the story.
The story is the interaction. And actually, the way you describe it in the book is quite lovely about how the younger people will do many things for the older people, wash them, bathe them, help them, do whatever, which is really just not a part of most people's daily existence in big cities, right? So we got a problem in big cities about this if we want to live longer and be healthier. Is that fair to say?
It's not just in big cities. I would say in North America in general and most industrialized societies, the way you age is, as George Burns says, you know, having a happy, loving family, close-knit, loving family living in another city.
That's a great line. Yeah.
Well, we are a very mobile society, and that combined with the fact that people are living longer, so their friends and spouses and relations may die before they do or move away, combined with our increasing digital interaction means that most older folks spend a lot of time by themselves, and that just wasn't the case there. You know, one of the scientists said, you know, they're always surrounded by people there with whom they like to natter, and I love that word.
Natter.
Right, because they're considered central. And one woman who I questioned about it, and I said, no, really, you're with your uncle, you can't go out because he's a shut-in unless somebody comes to relieve you. No, isn't this a problem for you? And she said, you know, you just don't understand. These people are a treasure for us. This is an honor for me to look after my Zio. And so, of course, there's a kind of cultural disconnect. But where it really started for me on this book is that the kind of social interaction that we get, not only later in life, but early in life, really matters. And it not only matters, it can be transformative. It can affect how we learn, how we hold on to facts, how well we fight off infection, for example, or if you have a serious knock like a cancer diagnosis or heart disease, how well you recover from that.
But if I remember that part of the book well, and if I haven't, you'll remind me, she wasn't begrudging the fact that she had to do all those things. She did say she felt it was an honor to take care of her, I guess, uncle, Zio, uncle. But she did acknowledge there was some sacrifice involved and that she wasn't living the life that she might otherwise be able to live. Now, that's something that I guess most North Americans of the younger generation don't want to do anymore. So again, it does put us kind of behind the 8 ball in that regard, doesn't it?
Yes and no. I would say that that particular lifestyle, which is not just a genetic inheritance, but a cultural approach to how you live, which is ensconced in a community. As you age and are looked after by your children, your nieces, nephews, and surrounded by the community, I think actually I may have captured that generation before that phenomenon fades. I felt as if I was really interviewing what would be Holocaust survivors. In other words, a last chance, because this next generation may be less willing to do that. I mean, I did ask some of the younger people, and people my age said, of course, everybody does it. Men, women, everybody takes time to look after their parents. But when I asked my interpreter's younger sister, who was 16, I said, are you going to look after your parents when they become infirm and immobile and so on? And she shrugged her shoulders and she said, nah, let the Russians do it.
Let the Russians do it. I know.
Yeah, so I think it is ephemeral, probably, but we can pull out lessons from that.
Let's get a little sciencey here if we can. What's going on right here, right now, as you and I are having a face-to-face conversation, looking at each other, in each other's presence, that's so beneficial that even if we had 10 times as much contact via our Blackberries or Skype or whatever else, it just wouldn't be the same?
Well, first, there's a whole cascade of neurotransmitters and hormones that are released when the two of us are across the table like this. I'm looking at your eyes, we're locking eyes, and when you move your arms, and I kind of wave my arms around a little bit too. And so this mimicry and synchrony is telling us in a very kind of vestigial way that we're of one mind, okay? And it makes me trust you more. Because, that might be a bad thing when you're intelligent. I was going to say, you
don't know me that well, that's why.
Exactly, right. But all of this, what's happening under the surface is that these neurotransmitters reduce stress. They give us a little dopamine rush so we feel rewarded, okay? And the stress gets tamped down not only right now, but well into the future, okay? And this trust is not only something that happens now either, but works into the future as well. So it's a very different interaction that we're having now than we would if you just sent me these questions over email and I answered them. I'm sure you'd get much more succinct responses. But the kind of liveliness of the exchange and the synchrony, the back and forth that happens in a real conversation would be completely absent, and the effects of that synchrony would be absent physiologically.
So you've actually identified empirical scientific evidence that suggests it's not only more fun, but it's actually better for both of our health if we do it this way, if we communicate like this. Yes?
Exactly, as long as we're not arguing.
Well, we're not yet.
Yes.
The night is young.
Right.
Now, all right, actually, maybe we should start arguing right here, because I'm looking at one of the charts in your book, and I know when I saw this, I really was quite astonished by it. What reduces your chances of dying the most? This is the chart that's fairly early on in the book. And you've got ahead of exercise, ahead of getting a flu shot, ahead of giving up heavy drinking, ahead of not smoking, strong relationships and social support. It is that much more important to good health than all of those other things?
Believe me, Steve, this was a shock to me too. And that's why it was so new to me. And I'm a psychologist, so I felt I should have known it. But that study was published in 2010. It is a meta-analysis of about 49,000 subjects, so it's not a small, eensy-weensy study. And what they did is they measured everything about people and their habits and then followed them through time with one question at the end. Who's going to still be alive and breathing at the end of 7.5 years? And then they looked at which factors were most predictive. So yes, believe it or not, more important than how thin or overweight you are, more important than how much you exercise or smoke or drink is your social interaction. But what's really interesting is it's not just your nearest and dearest who matter. It's also the larger circle. So this is why I call the book The Village Effect, because it's not just the people who you really depend on at times of need. That's what you call social support, and that is predictive. But also what's called social integration. What scientists mean by that is the people that you cross paths with day to day. And there are many fewer of those people now that our lives are migrating online. So, for example, the shopkeeper that you might see every day if you're doing your shopping on foot, or the kiosk where you buy your newspaper every day, or if you go to work in a real office, your office mates who you do interact with face-to-face every day. Or, for example, if you participate in your community or play hockey. Let's talk of something Canadian. You play hockey once a week and then you go out for a drink with the guys every week. That would count. Those larger relationships are equally predictive of how long you live. So that's why what could be a provocative statement that your social integration can give you a 2 to 15-year lifespan advantage comes from that kind of social involvement, getting out there, participating.
Let me pick up on the comment you made early in that answer about being in a time of need. Because I guess we all sort of instinctively think that if you're in trouble, if you're in the hospital, if you're fighting cancer, that kind of a thing, and you've got how you put it, an inner circle and an outer circle of people who are there to be your support network, that of course, that's intrinsically a good thing. But are you now saying that there's empirical evidence that your recovery, that your ability to fight off illness is better if you have those social interactions in your life?
Amazing as it seems, say, for example, there was a study of 4,000 nurses who had breast cancer. And they found that the women who already had a diagnosis of breast cancer, who had larger in-person social networks, meaning people they saw face-to-face, were 4 times as likely to survive their illness. Okay, it doesn't predict whether or not you'll have the bad luck of getting that kind of terrible diagnosis, but it does help attenuate how the disease progresses.
So you can't say, if I have this great circle of supportive friends, I won't get sick in the first place. You can't go there.
No, I think that what you can say is that, life for everyone includes some hard knocks, and that your social contacts help you not only in the concrete way of providing the social support of visiting you in the hospital, or bringing some kind of comfort food to you, or driving you places where you need to go, but actually just sitting there with you and spending time with you is also having a huge impact on health.
Let's look on the flip side then. For those who don't have the inner and outer circle, the supportive network, the village effect in their lives, from an evolutionary standpoint, how do we respond when we're isolated, when we have no one?
Well, the body responds as if it were in pain, as if there were a physical insult. And actually, the areas of your brain that become activated when you're experiencing physical pain are very similar to the areas that are activated when you're socially isolated. And this is why, for example, prisoners who are in solitary confinement, they can experience neural injury, neural kind of damage by being in isolation so long. It's so important to our survival as a species.
John McCain said that, right? That your former presidential candidate, John McCain, who was a POW, I guess, in Vietnam for, was it 5 years, 6 years, something like that?
Well, he said that being in solitary confinement was more painful to him than any of the abuse, physical abuse and torture that he suffered.
And this was a guy with I mean, they broke both his arms, they broke one of his legs. I mean, he lay there unable to get medical treatment for horrendous injuries, and he thought being in isolation was more painful than that.
Yeah, so a little fact that I think very few people know is that, most of us know that if you have a headache, you can take a Tylenol and you'll feel better. What most people don't know is if you feel that your heart is breaking because you are suddenly alone in the world, if you take a Tylenol, you'll feel better. Okay? Because really, we are a social species, and being alone raises alarm signals physiologically that more or less tell you, if you don't fix this problem, you are a goner.
I think I got the quote here from McCain. It crushes your spirit and weakens your resistance more effectively than any other form of mistreatment. Did that come as a surprise to you?
No, because by the time I reached that quote, I was well on this journey to seeing how important, if not essential, it is to our survival and our happiness and our ability to function well, really.
So, I don't want to get overly political here, but for those who would say we need the death penalty because ... 20 years in solitary is torture compared to the death penalty. Is that right?
Well, let's not get to the death penalty because you're beyond pain at that point.
Okay.
But I would say that, yes, it is the equivalent of waterboarding or worse.
Loneliness kills, but in an age of social media where we are constantly connected, sort of, are we, ironically, at a greater risk of isolation in those circumstances?
Yes, incredibly, because it gives us a certain type of connection, but it's not really great at building trust and intimate social bonds. So, I mean, these kinds of online digital connections are fabulous for searching. They're wonderful for communicating little discrete bits of information. What they're not great at is what we're engaged in right now, that kind of dynamic give and take of our true conversation, or the kind of, the little pats and high fives and fist bumps and so on that release that oxytocin. The digital can't, at least not yet, do that for us. And some emerging research is showing, really, that there are different parts of the brain that become activated in person versus when you have a more static type of communication. And those areas of the brain are associated with A, reward, okay, it feels good, B, attention, and C, problem solving, social problem solving. Being able to understand, what is that person thinking now? What is he going to say or do next?
But for those people who are watching us right now saying, wait a second, I can't be lonely. I've got 5,000 Facebook friends and 40,000 Twitter followers. I am bathing in the accompaniment of people, admittedly on social media. What's the response?
Well, when you put air quotes around a word before, well, I would say most people put air quotes around friends. And, I know it's probably breaking a cardinal rule to mention another media outlet, but, I was listening to The Current last week, and Anna Maria Tremonti was interviewing homeless people on the streets of Toronto when it dipped below 20. And one of them said, she said, where do you go to warm up? And he said, I go to the library because I really love using the computers there. I'm a big fan of social media. He said, I love it. I have 10,000 Facebook friends, and nobody knows that I'm homeless.
Boy, doesn't that sum it up?
Right. So, I mean, here he is. He's living on the streets in minus 20, and he doesn't have a friend who's close enough to him to know that he's suffering. And this is what the surveys are telling us now. I mean, that's an extreme example, but for most of us, our intimate networks have declined over the last 30 years. Since the mid-'80s, we had about at least 3 people we could depend on. Now we have 2 or fewer people we can depend on. I mean, that's a big loss. That we're talking about a loss of a third in quite a short time period.
I get why email or Facebook or Twitter, I get why that would work that way. What about Skype, where you're actually seeing the other person, they're seeing you. You're not in person, but it's, is it halfway there?
Yeah, I think it's not as good as the real thing,
sure,
but it's an intermediate step. And so, one of the frustrations with Skype is, as anybody knows who's used this kind of medium, is it's okay for people you're not that close to, but for people you really love and care about, it's not that satisfying, and it's a bit frustrating because you're not actually making eye contact because of the way the camera is aimed, right? You don't make that true eye contact. So you feel a little bit of frustration, and sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between the sound and the image.
Yeah, it buffers and freezes and all of that too, from time to time.
It's like you have to have more than one tool in your box, or as somebody said to me, you have to have a varied investment strategy. You don't want to put everything in one basket, neither all online nor face-to-face. You have to vary it. So Skype and FaceTime, they're great and they're moving in the right direction, but they still don't replace the face-to-face.
Right, but if you're a grandparent who lives in, I don't know what, Florida, California,
right,
and your kids are 3,000 miles away, your grandkids,
it's the next best thing to being there.
That's all you can
I think
do.
the mistake, though, Steve, is that because it's so cheap and so easy, people think it's good enough. But if you want your relationship to persist over years, and of course, family members are excused from this type of research, but the research is telling us that if you don't see somebody face to face within, say, 18 months to 5 years, that relationship will decay. So Skype or no Skype, you actually have to renew that relationship with real contact. It's kind of like watering a plant, right? I mean, you can enjoy that plant, but if you don't feed and water it, it's going to die on you. And the same thing for a human relationship. Now, this research was done on young adults. And what they did say is that family members have a much longer timeline.
I was just going to say, if it's parent and child, that can't be the same criteria.
I agree with you.
Yeah, okay.
But essentially, this similar biological processes are at work.
Okay, let's, I want to talk about these digital natives, because I think this generation behind us is, I mean, they just interact in a completely different way, it seems. Not all of them, of course, but many. Personal computers, and they've all got tablets, and they've all got smartphones, and you know, what is it on iTunes? 60% of iTunes best-selling apps are targeted at toddlers and preschoolers. I mean, we're in a whole new universe here. What do you think all of that, what kind of an impact is all of that having on their personal development?
First, I just want to take a step back and saying, who is actually buying those apps for toddlers?
Yeah,
it's not
parents.
It's the parents.
Yeah.
So we can't pin this all on the younger generation. And I think that many people who are in positions of power, they are not 17, and they are the ones who are making the decisions about pushing digital media on kids.
So smarten up parents.
And, yeah, and policymakers and educators.
Okay.
But yes, I would say for the kids, it's wonderfully rewarding. We all love our devices. Why wouldn't the kids love them too? But here's some really sobering facts, okay? Children who are preschoolers, so under like the age of 5, are spending about an average of 4 hours a day in front of a screen. A lot of that is time spent alone. School-age kids, that it's about an average of 7-8 hours a day. This is a lot of time not spent interacting with people. And what we know from human development is the human brain is built to interact, right? So, and the research has been done to show that when screens are present, and the way they did this research is amazing, they attached microphones to little kids. So while they ran around the house and did what they did, it captured all the noises that were happening. And what they discovered, this is research from Seattle by Andrew Meltzoff and Dimitri Christakis, and they discovered that the more screen entertainment was on around the kid, whether they were watching or listening or not, the fewer adult words were directed to that child, and the less the child spoke too. And we're talking about a huge number, like 500 to 1,000 fewer words per hour directed to that child.
So this has profound implications for language development, for example.
Yes, which is why there's a correlation between how much screen time kids are getting and how well they're doing in school, say in grade 4.
I remember, do I have it here? Yes, I do. My trusty little BlackBerry here, not so little anymore. I have a new cousin and was going to show the cousin a little video. Oh, she's a few months old. And my cousin, her parent, said, oh no, we're not allowing any screens in front of the baby's eyes for a long time yet. And of course, my initial instinct was to be offended, but then my secondary thought was, that's probably pretty smart. Okay, you're an expert. What do you think?
It's not only smart, it's the advice of the Canadian American Pediatric Association. No screens for kids under 2. I don't know how old your cousin is.
A few months, just born.
Right. So, you know, the way I look at it is, you know, every parent believes in a balanced diet and feeding their child the right foods. Most parents would not put mashed up chicken fingers and Smarties in front of their kids 3 meals a day. And when you allow them unlimited, unfettered access to screen entertainment, that's essentially what you're doing. Now and then a little junk food is fine, right? But as a steady diet, it's not a great idea. And we're not talking about waistlines here, we're talking about brain lines, if I could invent a word. So, you know, a little bit is fine after the age of 2, ramping up very, very gradually as kids get older. But the amount that most Canadian kids are watching right now without being limited by their parents is probably not advisable, because let's face it, what they are doing online is not educational for the most part.
Right. Everybody knows this instinctively, and yet there are so many parents, I think, in our generation who don't do this because it's often hard to do. Eating supper together. That is huge, isn't it?
Well, it's the strongest predictor of school achievement and happiness in adolescence that we have.
Why, that's incredible. Why would that be?
Well, we don't know that, you know, psychology and social science in general is great at describing what is and is not great at describing why. But we can speculate that what happens over a family meal is the family is sitting down together for at least 20 minutes, half an hour.
Assuming no devices allowed.
No devices allowed, we hope, and talking to each other. That's already huge, okay? So the fact, just sitting down with your child, it's not, as they would say, what they call, you know, really difficult. You know, sitting down and having a meal, if you can't do it every day, then, you know, once or twice a week is better than nothing. 3 times a week is even better than twice a week, because it really predicts a lot of things that most parents, I would say probably all parents, want for their kids. It predicts school success. It predicts whether or not girls get pregnant in high school. Okay?
No kidding.
It predicts whether or not they're going to go to college and get a good job. So it's such a strong predictor, and it's so easy. It's not what's on the plate. It's what's happening over the plate.
You say it's so easy, but we know, again, and it's a generational thing, there are many people who are, let's be honest, a bit afraid of their moody, occasionally angry, belligerent teenage kids. And it's easier just to drop them a plate and let them stay in their bedroom and watch their TV or be on their screens or interact with their friends on whatever, than to actually force them to come to the table and interact with the rest of the family. That's hard to do sometimes. As crazy as it sounds, it's hard to do, right?
Yes, and I would say that in a lot of instances, digital communication is the path of least resistance, both for the parents and for the teenagers or younger people. You don't have to evaluate how your comment lands on somebody else, how they feel, what they think about. Nobody is going to talk back to you. Yeah. Right? Because you just lob this comment and it goes off into the ether and you don't get any pushback, right? I mean, you do eventually, maybe online, but you don't actually have to face the person and deal with their emotions and how they feel and actually resolve problems. So it is the path of least resistance on both sides.
And it's a skill we're losing.
It's hard to say what's going to happen in the future, but I do know that empathy is a skill that you have to practice. Social skills don't come easily, certainly not to everybody. And it's something that you have to practice bit by bit. We don't learn how to ride a bicycle or drive a car or do algebra without practice. Why would we know how to predict what somebody else is thinking or feeling without practice?
Sure. I'm going to let you grab a sip of water here because we're going to play some tape. This is incredible. But in your book, you cite the case of a 14-year-old kid in California, young girl, who sent 27,000 text messages in a month. Here's, monitor over my shoulder, Louis C.K. on the Conan O'Brien program talking about why he would never allow his daughters to have cell phones. Roll tape.
You know, I think these things are toxic. I don't, especially for kids. It's just this thing. It's bad, and right. they don't look at people when they talk to them, and they don't build empathy. You know, kids are mean, and it's because they're trying it out. They look at a kid and they go, "You're fat," and then they see the kid's face scrunch up and they go, "Ooh, that doesn't feel good to make a person do that." Right. But they got to start with doing the mean thing. But when they write "you're fat," then they just go, that was fun. I like that.
Now, he's a comedian, not a sociologist or psychologist to the best of my knowledge, but he's onto something there, isn't he?
He is onto something, and he is very clever and insightful. Because, you know, as you know, in Canada, we've had a spate of cyberbullying. Yep. And it's had tragic consequences. And it happens because people don't have to face the music of how their taunting or insults are landing on the other person. And this is essentially how bullying works. It's not really different than the old-fashioned style of bullying that everybody's familiar with. The difference is the incredible long arm of its reach and the immediacy and the fact that you can't take it back or say, I'm sorry. It's out there. And so essentially, he is capturing that with humor, but also saying, you know, do I want my daughter exposed to that kind of abuse? No, thank you.
Hell no. A couple minutes left here. Let's just touch on a couple of more things. Do you think teenagers today, as a result of all of what we've been talking about, have less human intimacy, whether it's romantic engagements, platonic interactions, whatever it is, than, say, you know, their parents would have before devices took over everybody's life?
I think they're different. It's hard to generalize about all teenagers.
Sure.
And there are different factions out there, just as adults have different behaviors. I would say probably that adults are much more uniform in their use of devices now. But I would say also, you know, there's a certain faction of younger people that is pushing back against this, and they're moving towards a more authentic way of life, not only home brewing their beer and making their own pickles, but they want the real experience. They want a real classroom, they want real friends, they want real romantic relationships. So I would hesitate to paint all of young people with the same brush.
For sure, but I don't know. It feels to me the toothpaste is out of the tube and we're just really going to have a hell of a time trying to recreate the Village effect going forward. So what do we do?
Yes, I don't think it's impossible. I mean, I grew up at a time when you drove along the highway with your car and you rolled down the window and you threw your trash out the window.
Right, we don't do that anymore.
No, we don't. But at the time, everybody said, impossible to change people's habits. Okay, our habits have changed. I mean, I don't know about Toronto, but in Montreal, we recycle, we compost. Our habits are different now. People talk about the pipeline, they talk about the ozone layer. They didn't do that a generation ago. And I think that in terms of the digital revolution, or as one person called it, not the digital age, but the loneliness age, I think that we can stop it now by recognizing it and talking about it. Nobody is throwing away their devices anytime soon, least of all me. But conflating the two types of communication is essentially like saying, you know, well, driving to the corner to get a liter of milk is the same thing as walking there. Or like eating a Big Mac and eating my grandmother's lasagna is the same because they're both 2,000 calories. Okay? We are more sophisticated than this now, and because of the fresh evidence that's emerging from social neuroscience and epidemiology, we'd be fools not to sit up and pay attention.
I'm glad we had you on because we're paying attention. You got to come in more often, you know? It's really great. Not every 8 years, more often. That's Susan Pinker, The Village Effect, How Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Healthier and Happier. What a great read. Learned so much. Thanks for visiting us at TVO tonight.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.